What up, what up, what up? Good to be here. Good to be speaking at large group gathering. I love it. I love it. Um, as you guys know, with kind of this time from here to this summer, I'm traveling. I'm support raising. Um, that's something that as a missionary, that's what I do. I support raise. So for you guys, I only like speak once a month now, so which is great because Josh is an amazing speaker. Give it up for Josh. He does such a great job. So after hearing Josh, I might just retire from speaking and just encourage him. But man, it's great to be just smashing out this series on idols and idols that are in our lives. I first want to give a shout out. Daniel Guy, where you at? Put your hand up. Give it up for Daniel Guy back there. Young adult pastor in Central Assembly. He meets with a group of students on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. And he hangs out there. He's an awesome dude to get to know. After service, hit him up, talk to him. If you're looking somewhere to go on Sunday, Central Assembly is a great church. They support Chi Alpha greatly. And you guys can go over there, hang out, connect with him, be a part of that. He just loves Chi Alpha, got a great heart. And I'm so glad. It's an honor every time he comes and hangs out with us. And I also want to give a shout out to Girls Night, Guys Night. Listen, ladies, fellas, man, this is just a way that we can go deeper in our community, be a part of that, go for to those things. That the lady that we're having come down speak, she's absolutely amazing. She's going to bless you, ladies. For our guys, we're doing an in-house thing, but also when we say laser tag, it's legit. Like, this guy comes, he brings these SWAT scenarios. We're like throwing like grenades. It's next level. You can change the settings and like snipe people from across the room. It's amazing. I'm telling you, listen, you are not like, you want to be there. So make sure you're there. Make sure you're making that happen. And we'll be continuing on with our series on idols and idols in our lives. And we're going to be pushing that. Josh last week talked about the idol of money. And he shared about that and just shared many great points in that. And, one of the things that he shared and talked about was, I love this quote, is a lack of generosity is not a money issue, but it's a heart issue. And really just hits it home with that point. And we're continuing on with this concept of idols that can be in our lives, things that can basically, what's an idol? Something that we put above God, something that we put above Jesus. And kind of further on, there's a lot of uncomfortable moments that are in our lives. And some of them actually are very good for us. I think uncomfortable moments draw things out of us at many times that I think can be very healthy. And a lot of times, especially kind of in American culture, I think we focus more on being comfortable than anything else. And I think it's something that like we walk our lives kind of focused on. And we use a lot of energy on being comfortable and not facing anything that's uncomfortable. And I think in some sense, it can become an idol in our life. And, I have my fair share of uncomfortable moments, like the day that we're in junior high and me, Edmund, and George decide to cut school, right? So we're chilling. There's a little, in New York, they call them bodegas. It's actually a Spanish term for store, okay? And since there's lots of Hispanics, we're in New York, everybody calls them bodegas, right? And there was one of these little stores, and it's just like little like store that has everything you can think about, right? And there's one in front of our junior high, so we're hanging out there, and we just impromptu decide to cut school. We're like, yo, let's go. It's Friday. It's a holiday. You didn't know it was a holiday? It is. Let's go, right? So we're like, yo, what we're gonna do, right? Because we decided to cut school, but we realized like we ain't got nothing to do. We can't go home. So we decided, we're like, yo, let's go to a mall. This is hype. We tried to take the train to go to a mall, but the conductor's like, hey, like, you know, the train attendant was like, you should be in school. So we ran, we got scared, and then we walk all the way to the mall. We get to the mall, and we realize that the mall's closed. It's like, doesn't open till like 10. We get to the mall, you know what I mean? It's like 9 o'clock by the time we get to the mall. None of the stores are open. Of course, the mall security is like, hey, you should be in school. So, like, we run out of there. And then we leave. We walk all the way back. Almost got attacked by a dog. Like, it was just bad. And then this is what we decide. We're like, man, let's just go back to school, right? So this is what we decide. We end up back in the store. We're like, yo, let's go back to school. So we're like, all right, you go in first, right? And what's your excuse? He's like, all right, I didn't feel good, so I slept in, and then I came in late. All right. And we're like, what's your excuse? He's like, I went to the dentist. And what's my excuse? I was like, I went to the doctor. I was like, man, we're so creative, man. Let's go. So we go in, like, one by one. I was last. And then I walk in, and, you know, you have to check in. And it's like, why are you late? I went to the doctor. And my principal turns the corner. He was like, Mr. Estrella, I've been waiting for you. He guides me into his office, and there's Edmund and George in his office just sitting down. He was like, hey, let me tell you a story. You know, what's today? I was like, it's Friday. You know what happens on Friday? I get paid on Friday. That's what happens on Friday. So I got my paycheck, right? And he's like, you know what I do with my paycheck? I cash that paycheck, right? So I'm driving to the bank. And as I'm driving to the bank, I look up in the sky at the train station, and I see 3 guys at the train station hanging out up there. And I was like, so we knew you were cutting all day. I was like, great doctor's appointment you had, Andy. And I was like, oh, man. So he's like, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to stay after school, and you're going to help clean the school. He's like, and then all you guys got to call your parents and tell them what happened. Now, listen, man, I didn't care about cleaning the school. Listen, calling my mom, listen, dude. When you're Hispanic, man, you don't want to let your mom know stuff, man. My mom was just very good at being uncomfortable. Like, my friends would come over. They're like, dude, is your mom mad at me? No, man, she crazy. I don't know what to tell you. But, dude, again, George gets on the phone, calls. His mom's home. His mom was a stay-at-home mom. And he calls. He's like, Mommy, tells her what's the deal. And, dude, not a lie. You can hear her through the phone. She's like, man, like, in Spanish, you just going off on him, dude. You wait till your dad gets home. Like, you can literally, he held the phone out. We all heard, right? And we're like, oh, he's crying, dude, because he knows his dad's going to light him up, dude, right? And then Edmund gets on the phone, picks up, and his mom happens to be home. His mom's a nurse. And he's like, oh, Mom, you're home? And she's like, yes, why are you asking? Like, his mom was like, no joke, man. She was hardworking, and he was like, I got to stay after school. And and then she obviously asked why, and he's like, because I cut school. And all you heard was like, wait till you get home, and then she hung up. It was like, and he's like, she hung up. And then I'm like, oh man, I know my mom's not gonna be home because my mom, she owned a cleaning business. She wasn't gonna be home. So I was like, I'm gonna have to leave a message. What'd I do? I'm like, bro, I leave that message in Spanish. I'm like, ain't nobody, the principal don't know Spanish. I'll leave a message in Spanish and say something else, but sound like I'm scared. So they think, literally I come up, the message comes on, and I was like, Mom, I'm gonna have to stay after school because I've done good in school, and they're gonna give me a pizza party. That's what I said on the phone. I was like, but they were like right there, right? So I want to make sure that I sounded like I was sad to say this and everything. So my tone was a little bit off, right? But I had to do it, right? Because I had to fake them out, right? So, dude, we go up to class, and, dude, I am bragging like crazy. I'm like, bro, your boy got out of this, man. My mom thinks I'm doing good. What's up? Like, I was like, Edmund, you know you're going to get worked. Your mom going to work you, dude. Like, and I remember just talking smack, and, like, right before class is up, I get called down. And I was real close to the principal. I knew, like, sometimes when I did bad stuff, he would call me in and just encourage me. That's why I thought it was going to go down. I walk into the office, and boom, my mom is right there. Bro, my mom don't play. Like, this is the worst nightmare. Again, like, she's like, Andy, I heard your message, but you sounded scared. Like there's something wrong. So I came in just to find out what was wrong. So my mom heard the message, but it was like, man, it sounds a little off. I'm going to go in and investigate this. So my mom's there, and I'm like, dude, literally, like, all the blood. I was white for like 10 seconds of my life. Like, I had no rhythm. Like, I was great with numbers. It was awesome. I was on time. It was like great things were happening, right? So, like, I was like, oh my goodness. And then again, my vice principal, Mr. Hasek, walks out. He's like, Mrs. Estrella, this is a great day. I'm getting to meet so many people today. I was like, man, I got so much to tell you. Step into our office. So here I am in the vice principal's office with my mom at a like this little like table. They had this round table, and they proceed to tell my mom what happened that day. And dude, my mom, you can see in her face, bro, she is furious. She is not hiding it, dude. And they're telling her, and she looks at me, and she just goes off. She's like, oh my God. I was like, you wait till you get home. And they were like, so now the whole meeting changes to them trying to calm my mom down. They're like, Mrs. Estrella, don't worry. They were like, don't worry. He's going to have to stay after school and clean the whole school. That's what we told him we have to do. And she's like, how long? They're like, one day. They're like, just today. He's like, no. She's like, the whole entire year. Like, she was, and they're like, no, we can't do that the whole year. She's like, and they compromised. Instead of one day, now I have a whole month that I have to stay after. Like, if it was up to my mom, I would be a professional janitor. That's what, like, that was so, and she's like going off, right? And she's like flipping out, and like I wore a hat, and she hated. Like right now, my mom would not be happy up here with a hat. And she was like, and she reaches over, grabs my hat, and she's like, and take this hat off. She slams it down. And like, dude, like every time she reached for me, like I just backed up. I was backed up in the corner. Well, the whole time, my mom is going off. I'm crying. I'm like, listen, my life is flashing before me. But the door to the principal's office was wide open. And that door went straight to the front desk. And that desk looked beyond to a glass wall, right, where the whole hall would be there. And there in that glass wall, I see Edmund, George, and a bunch of my friends going like, ah. They're like, bro. They're like laughing at me, like, bro. And I was like, could you close the door, please? Like, bro, they're clowning on me. The next day, they're like, dude, I saw you. You were heckin' scared. Your mom was going to light you up. Dude, oh, man, I went home. I was like, listen, I can be homeless. It's cool. Like, I don't have to have a home. Is this a need? Like, and then the next day, literally, I got called back in the principal's office. And both my principals are sitting there and be like, hey, listen, yesterday was crazy. And this is literally, I am not making this up. They look at me and they're like, all right, so I just need some clarity. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, all right, so your mom comes here and gives you a whipping in English, and you get home and you get one in Spanish? Is that how it works? And they start clowning on me. They were like, and they're literally, I'm sitting there, and they start like, bro, we saved your life. They're like, we saved you. You are indebted to us. Like, and they just literally, they called me in just to make fun of me and called me back to my class. Bro, I was getting lit up all day long. And I remember it was extremely uncomfortable, right? When your mom comes in and your principals have to hold them back. But I learned a great principle. One, don't lie. Two, I'm not that slick, right? If I'm arrogant in front of my friends, the Lord will show me, right? There's so many things I learned that day. Seriously, I learned to be more honest. My relationship with my principals really grew. I had so much more respect for them because they really, really looked out for me. Seriously, they did. They looked out for my life. And But one of those things that we need to understand, that those uncomfortable things that we face in life are sometimes God uses that as a lesson for us. And a lot of times we live our life avoiding these things. But we got to understand the concept of comfort comes from God. Like, the concept of comfort is something that God created. Like, he's the source of comfort. And a lot of times we're worshiping the comfort and we're not worshiping the God who created it. And we need to walk through life understanding this. And I love Paul in 2 Corinthians when he starts to kind of unfold this. He talks about comfort. And it reads in 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 7. 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 7. It says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercy and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our afflictions, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction, with the comfort which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as we share abundance in Christ's suffering, so through Christ we share abundance in comfort too. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. And if we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which you experience when you patiently endured the same suffering that we suffered. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our suffering, you will also share in our comfort." You know, it's very interesting, like Paul, like he talks about comfort in affliction. Like, what? Like, it should be comfort, no affliction, okay? But he shares about these two things in this passage, and he shares about how God is the God of comfort. He comforts all things, and he shares this concept that like, the reason we experience comfort is not so we can keep it, but we can share in that comfort, that we can love and care for others. We can give that comfort out. We can host people. We can care for them. We can help them through hard times. We can share in their burdens, right? Because the comfort of the Lord is not designed for us to keep, but it's designed for us to share. You see, but kind of, in America, right, we live for the American dream. We live for the American dream, which is not a bad thing, right? Own a house, good job that pays well, right? You want a job that pays very, very well, you get some time, to have vacations, you can have new cars, at least 2 of them, okay? And then when your kids grow old enough, you can afford to buy them a car. You can send them to college. And this is the American dream. And there's nothing wrong with that dream. But when we infuse that with the gospel, the outcome that we have is a little bit different. You see, the American dream is meant to be the American dream. It's not meant to be infused with the gospel. It's not meant to influence the gospel, because the gospel is something that was created from God, and the American dream was created from Americans. I hope that we don't think the value of a house and the job that we have will be the fulfillment of our lives. I will hope that we will see past that and find our identity in who Jesus is, right? And here's Paul talking about afflictions and comfort, and sharing that we have to understand that God is the source of comfort. God is the source of comfort. And we can relate to this even personally, right? Because if somebody is your friend because of something you provide for them, if somebody has a relationship with you because of something you provide for them, this is not seen as a genuine relationship. You will hope that the relationships that you have, that you call genuine, are seen because of who you are, not what you can offer them. And I think a lot of times we walk following and seeking a relationship with Jesus because of the benefits and the things that he gives us, not because who he is. And if in our lives that would be a disingenuine relationship, then with Christ is the same. We don't follow Christ because of the comfort. That is not something that we put above him. But we understand that God is the provider of those things. You see, and even in Romans 5, in James chapter 1, it talks about these afflictions and how they lead for us to be better, how they lead to refine us, how these uncomfortable moments and these uncomfortable things that we face refine us and matures us. So the question is, how can this happen in our life if we're seeking for comfort over the Creator? You see, later on in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul kind of even draws this concept a little bit further about our lives and the things that they faced at that time, and how it was very uncomfortable to be a believer, how it was very uncomfortable for the things that they faced. If once they accepted Jesus and chose to live a life for Jesus, they accepted, in a sense, a life of persecution, a life of being rejected. And here is Paul again talking about that. And you can even see as he's writing the things that they faced, the intensity with their life daily being on the line. And it reads in chapter 4, verses 7 through 12, it says, "But we have this treasure in a jar of clay." He's talking about our lives. We have this treasure in a jar of clay. He's talking about our lives. To show the surpassing power belongs to God, not us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. There was a worship song written after this. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life is in you. How powerful is that? Like students, our bodies every day deteriorate. At one point, our cells are not going to regenerate. And old age will take on, right? When sin entered this earth, we face the consequences. We face the consequences physically and relationally. We're always struggling through that. And Paul was sharing that, but because we share in the death of Christ, there's life in us. You see, society and culture views comfort. It's for our flesh to be comfortable. You see, that's what culture and society, that's what, that's what all advertisement geared for us to have a more comfortable life, for us to have a more luxurious life. That's what society, they want our flesh to be comforted. But in God's view, we have to see beyond this. It's for your soul to be comfortable. And it's a different perspective, right? Because when you look at your day, if you wake up and you work out, that's very uncomfortable for your body, but for your soul, that's very good. Right? When you're in the right, when you're putting in your time to spend with Jesus, and when you're on top of the things that you need to do, and when you're being responsible, and when you're pushing yourself, your soul is being comforted, but it challenges and stretches your body. And we need to understand this, that God is comforting our souls. And in just a few verses, Paul talks about this. In chapter 4, verses 16 through 18, it says, "So we do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentarily affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparisons, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, they're temporarily, right? But the things that are unseen are eternal." Guys, you can't focus on what's comfortable for your flesh. We have to look beyond that. We have to look beyond that. We have to push beyond that. And there's one thing that we have to understand. If you are not careful, you will allow your discomfort to keep you from what God has for you. If we are not careful, we will allow our discomfort, right? Fear of being, feeling uncomfortable, fear of going through that, and it will keep us from what God has for us. Because that's our focus. That's where our energy goes. And if you think of it, if you step back, it's a very selfish way to live life. It's a very selfish way to live life. Seeking comfort over Jesus impacts us spiritually. It impacts us with worship. For some of you guys, you're here today, and being in a large group makes you uncomfortable. And I know now with technology, you can have technology. If you're an introvert, you love technology, right? You can text somebody, you can communicate to the world through your phone. For some of you guys, these large settings make you uncomfortable. And for some people, they don't come to them because they're like, oh my goodness, a group of people, it just makes me uncomfortable. And it hinders you from being included in group worship. For some of you guys, it's probably the total opposite, man. You can't be real with yourself. You can't spend time with just you and God. That makes you uncomfortable. And you fulfill it by, constantly be around people. You don't face things within you because you're constantly, you just go from one thing to another. And that fear to face that uncomfortability hinders you from worship, from interacting in a group setting and even personally with God. It hinders that. Can prevent you from engaging fully in biblical community. Listen, I want to let you know, community is messy. I want to let you know a formula for things of God being messed up. It's called people. Like, once people are it can be a great thing. Like, God can give a great thing, and then people grab a hold of it, and then we're going to mess it up. A lot of people talk to me like, what about this in the Bible? I'm like, people. Like, I just want to let you know, especially all Paul's writing, it's about people messing up and him writing to them like, hey, dude, you're jacked up. There's only really one book that he's happy. Like, the rest of the books, he's like, dude, I am sick and tired of you guys. Why? Because it's people. How can you be open and transparent, right, without not being willing to be uncomfortable? Right? In a group of people, there's conflicts, there's arguments, there's disagreements. If you're not willing to be uncomfortable, if you're seeking comfort over Jesus, then you can't look past that. You can't say, all right, man, we disagree, but let's talk about it. Let's understand each other more. Like, I value our friendship, and I know we see different on this, but I value you, and I value who you are as a friend, and I just want to know more about it. Let's work this out, and you can't see past that because you're too focused on being comfortable. How can you live in true community? How can you live in biblical community when your idol is worship of comfort? When your focus is on that, it impacts your relationship. It makes it difficult to bear one another's burden. Right? If you live your life dodging uncomfortability, how can you bear somebody else's burden? How can you be there for them? How can you walk through hard times for them? How can you open up? How can you trust somebody? Listen, when you trust somebody, it's very uncomfortable in the beginning. Why? Because you're taking a risk. And so many people are come across like, man, I've gone through so many things. It's hard for me to trust people. It keeps you from living God's mission. It keeps you from living God's mission. This is very important. We have a fear of rejection. You know, for some of you guys, you haven't chosen to go on a mission trip because it makes you very uncomfortable. Raising money for your mission trip, that's very uncomfortable for you. And you're like, no, I can't come up with the money. I'm not going to do it. It's very uncomfortable, the things that you do on a mission trip. In fact, if we do a mission trip and it's very comfortable for everybody, we'll rework on that mission trip. And it's prevented from God's mission to be totally fulfilled in your life because your focus is on being comfortable. How can you reach out to somebody you don't know? How can you walk through the awkwardness of every relationship? Listen, every relationship you have started with awkwardness. I guarantee you. Listen, talk to married couples. 80% of them was like, well, first time we went on a date was very awkward. But if we take comfortability over Jesus, how can we live his mission in our life? Because his mission requires for us to be uncomfortable to do that. When comfort is your focus, it keeps us from engaging fully in the life that God has for us. When comfort is your focus, it keeps us from engaging fully in the life that God has for us. Do you ever think that maybe for you to engage in what God fully has for you, God's mission fully for your life, it's going to require for you to be uncomfortable? Did you ever think that maybe God would use uncomfortability to stir some things up, to bring some stuff that is deep within you to the surface so you can deal with it? But if your focus is to be comfortable, how is that ever going to play out? When comfort is your focus, when comfort is our focus, it keeps us from engaging fully in the life that God has for you. It keeps us from that. Because we take comfortability and we put it within our hearts above God. You see, like, you know, the worship team, you guys can come up. There's one story in the Bible that really shares about this, because like when comfort is your focus, right? Inconveniences, you just automatically reject them. And I want to let you know, to love other people, to care for other people, it's going to be very inconvenient for you. There's no such thing, really. True giving isn't convenient. True giving is uncomfortable. Like when you truly give of yourself, it's uncomfortable, right? Because you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for somebody else. And the true meaning of that requires uncomfortability, right? And when comfort is your focus, like you allow for no inconvenience in your life. Anything that comes in your life that becomes an inconvenience, you automatically reject it. You automatically push it away. And maybe for some of you guys, it maybe stops from what God is truly trying to do in your heart. For what God has for you, his mission to be fully seen in your life. And, kind of one of the stories comes to mind, and, I shared this story with our staff and our student leadership team, and it's a story of how, in Luke chapter 5, when Jesus and Peter and Andrew and John and James first kind of met, and the first time they had their interaction, it talks about it in Luke chapter 5. And, due to time, I'll just kind of tell you guys the story, but, there was a crowd around Jesus. There was a crowd around Jesus, and the crowd was getting large. So Jesus went out to and saw that there was a free boat, like it was available per se. There was nobody in the boat, right? So he goes, and it was Peter and Andrew's boat, and he was like, "Hey, can I borrow this boat? Is there any way I can borrow this boat?" And and again, you got to understand, it's the end of the day. Peter and Andrew, they've had a full day of fishing. And in fact, it shares that they haven't been very successful that day in fishing. So here comes somebody saying, "Hey, can I borrow your boat?" It's very inconvenient for Peter, right? He just wants to go home. He's like, but Peter, seeing that Jesus was probably a rabbi or somebody that was well known, he just was like, "Yeah, hey, sure." Right? So Jesus, they laid out the boat some, and Jesus speaks to the audience. Now, if you look at this, if you ever been around any large bodies of water, you understand that sound travels on top of water very far. In fact, I was just at a camp 2 summers ago in Washington State, and it's at the edge of an amazing, amazing lake. And right across, like a half a mile across, probably even further, there's this incredible house. At first, I thought it was another camp. No, it's somebody's home, okay? But at nighttime, when all the students are sleeping, and it's late at night because I don't sleep, right? When people are out in the yard having a conversation, you can clearly hear it on the other side of the river. It's almost like they're right next to you because the sound travels over the water clearly. So Jesus did this, right? 1, it was crowd control. Nobody's going to jump in the water after him. And 2, the whole audience can hear him. How awesome is that? Right? So he speaks to the audience, right? He's done, right? All right, cool. Peter lent them the boat. He's like, "All right, I stayed here. I listened to you, but I got to go. It's the end of the day. I'm tired," right? And Jesus asked Peter and Andrew for one more thing. He's like, "Hey, can you guys go out and cast your nets one more time?" Now, you got to understand this, right? They have nets. When you go fishing with nets, at the end of the day, what do you do to those nets? You clean those nets, right? It's very tedious. It's very annoying, right? They're probably rolled up. And Peter says, like, "Hey, we've been fishing all day. It hasn't been a good day. We haven't caught any, but because you say so," it says in the passage, "because you say so, I'll go and do it." It's very inconvenient. Again, Jesus is asking something of Peter that is very inconvenient. It's asking something of Andrew that's very, very inconvenient. Listen, I'm done. I'm ready to go home. I want to forget about this day. I've caught nothing. Literally, today was a waste of a day. How do you, and again, the type of fishing that they were doing, right? If you're casting out nets, the top of the water gets warmer, the fish go deeper. You have less of a chance to catch more fish later on in the day, he was ready to wrap this up because you say so. So he goes out, professional fishermen. Him and Andrew go out. They're professionals. And some random boat borrower asked them. So they just do it. Whatever, they're like, we'll get this guy off of our back. He won't get out our boat. So whatever, let's just end this day. And they cast the net out and they bring it in. And that net is full of fish. So full of fish that they had to call their partners over, John and James. Their fishing partners. And they're like, there's no room in the boat for all these fish. And they're literally scooping fish into their boats. And both of the boats are about to sink. And right away, them being professional fishermen, right? Them being professional fishermen understand that right there, this should not happen. We are witnessing a miracle before their eyes. Witness the miracle. And right away, Peter goes over to Jesus. And we read in Luke chapter 5, verses 8 to 11. When Jesus saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they have taken. And so were James and John, sons of Zebedee, Simon's partner. I love what Jesus said. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid, for now on you will be fishers of people." So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. If you guys can stand up. Think about it. If Peter and Andrew weren't willing to be inconvenienced, if they were like, "Hey man, listen, we let you borrow the boat. It is late. Listen, don't tell us how to fish. Like, listen, we understand, like, man, you have a lot of followers. You seem like a very nice guy, but you don't know what's happened to us today. We've been unsuccessful." And because they were willing to be inconvenienced, their whole life was changed. And a lot of times when we worship comfort, right? When we put comfort above God, it holds us back from the miracle that God has in your life. When we allow comfort to be above God, it takes away, it hinders, it holds back the very mission and plan and fulfillment that God has for your life. If comfort becomes your focus, then it takes away from the miracle that you can witness in your life. The miracle of lives being changed. The miracle of literally people being transformed. The miracle of you making a great impact in the school, in your classroom, in your universe. We don't worship God because he provides comfort. We worship God because he is our creator. And if we worship comfort, sometimes the inconveniences that come to sharing God's love and being loving and caring and gracious to others, those inconveniences, to extend grace to somebody is very inconvenient because you have to forgive them. You have to look past the things they did. It's very inconvenient. But when we worship that, it takes away from that very blessing and the miracle that we have. If the prayer team can come up. Hey guys, man, we really encourage you to pray. And this is something I do if this message spoke to you, I really feel that, again, I try to, take away awkwardness as much as I can, right? So here's the deal. Like, I want people to know that they're not alone. I feel like one of the strategies of the enemy is to make you feel alone. And I want to show you that you're not. And if you're here today and you say, "Hey, Andy, this message truly spoke to me, and I'm going to go up for prayer, and I don't mind if other people know." And if other people know, that lets them know that they're not alone. I'm fine with that. And if that's you today, raise your hand. If you're saying, hey, Andy, this message spoke to me, raise your hand high. Raise your hand high so people can see you're not alone. You're not alone. For some of you guys, you've never received prayer that's not something, I've never had somebody pray for me, and it's very uncomfortable. You're like, I encourage you to push past that and allow for somebody to pray for you. Allow for you to get together with somebody and say, man, I focus on comfort way too much, and I need to change that in my life. I challenge you to look past that so you can receive prayer in something that's very powerful and important in your life. We're going to go into a time of worship. So this is the time that we worship. Man, I challenge you to just engage in that. I challenge you to come up and receive prayer and push past the uncomfortability. Let's worship.